Antwerp from SMM Connect. I am delighted to welcome you to this session. We're very pleased you could come. Translating your investment in sales enablement into sales performance is our topic today. It's something we should be thinking about all the time. Today we are very indebted to Integrity Solutions and Bruce and Donna for being here to walk us through this and help us understand how we can be better about this, how we can be more aware and better at implementing. So we'll turn things over to Bruce and Donna in just a few moments. In the meantime, I want to remind you that if you don't already subscribe to Sales and Marketing Sales and Marketing Management Magazine, you can do that by going to this link. You can click on the screen right now if you'd like on that bottom portion there and fill that out. For those of you who are joining us from Argentina and Mexico and other countries outside the U.S., you can subscribe to the digital version. If you're in the U.S., you can get both digital and print or one or the other, whatever you'd like, okay? Now, we have a number of webinars upcoming. You can see there on May 9th, Michael Leinbach, Dr. Leinbach will be back. He's going to be talking about 3 keys to get the most out of your sales manager. If you are a sales manager, you should probably attend to make sure you're getting the most out of your sales manager. That's you. And if you are anybody else, especially trainers and VPs and so forth, attend this session and invite others too. And then on May 15th, Mike Kunkel will return. And this time he's got a panel for us, a really great panel too. You can see there who's going to be on it. We'll be talking about the profitable link between business acumen, selling value, and effective negotiating, and that's the key there. So what can we do to be more effective in our negotiating? We hope you can join us for those. And if you go to smmconnect.com, click on the calendar of free webinars. We've got many more webinars ready to go. We just couldn't cram more onto that slide. So we hope you can you take a look at that and join us for many more. If you can't attend, go ahead and register anyway so you have access to the recording. Now, the recording of this session that we're going to start right now can easily be found today, a little bit later on in the afternoon, a few hours after we finish the webinar. Go to the homepage, smmconnect.com, and click this button on the right-hand side of the page, Recorded Webinar Archive, and that will take you to the archive. And the newest webinar is always listed at the very top of the page a few hours after the webinar ends. And here's a little hack there. You can also scroll down that page and you'll also find the newest one right underneath these upcoming webinars here. While you're there, don't forget to click this for free white papers, ebooks, and more. There's a wealth of materials there. And speaking of a wealth of materials, we definitely want to thank Integrity Solutions for one more thing today, and that is they've provided a couple of things here down in the bottom left-hand corner that I know you're going to want to download. For one thing, there is the PDF of today's slides. You'll want to take those, but you'll see there that there's an ebook and also a research brief, both from Integrity Solutions, that they have provided for free for you. You don't have to fill out a form or anything. Just go ahead and click the item and then download file, okay? So thank you to Integrity Solutions for that, and thank you for Will and everybody else at Integrity Solutions for sponsoring this event and being a great partner in this webinar series and making it possible for us to have 2 excellent speakers today. So I'd like to introduce you to them and turn things over to Bruce Wedderburn, who is the Chief Sales Officer at Integrity Solutions, and to Donna Horrigan. She's the VP of Client Development at Integrity Solutions. So Bruce and Donna, welcome to SMM Connect.
Hi, Gary. Is my volume good? Am I on? Okay,
just fine.
Good.
And Bruce, we see you smiling there, so you go right ahead.
Well, thank you for having us, Gary. We appreciate the opportunity, and we want to thank SMM Connect as well. So thank you all for joining us. We are delighted you've joined us to talk about how we increase our performance from our enablement efforts. And we look forward to engaging you in conversation in the next 45 minutes or so. We have some information to share, but we want to hear from you as well. And personally, having been in sales for over 25 years, sales and sales leadership, I've kind of watched the function change over the years and seen the birth, if you will, of the sales enablement function. So I've enjoyed being part of the Sales Enablement Society through the LinkedIn group, and you know, there's daily chatter out there about things that are happening, and it's wonderful to just stay in touch. So exciting times for sure. Before we get started, we're going to have Bruce share a little bit about integrity.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from. Thanks very much for joining us. My name's Bruce Wedderburn. I'm Head of Sales here at Integrity Solutions. 20 plus years in the performance improvement industry. So I'm going to share a little bit about us as an organization as well. The focus of today is not about integrity, but if I were in your shoes and listening to this, I would be asking myself, well, what gives this company called Integrity Solutions the right to be talking about sales enablement best practices with some degree of credibility? So rather than answer that and talk about us as an organization, that's not the focus of today. I just thought I'd take a quick 30 seconds and just highlight some of the results that our clients are achieving through their sales enablement and sales leadership functions. So whether it's being able to take new hires and turn them into productivity faster, whether it's being able to increase the overall productivity rate of the sales force and shift the bell curve of performance in a positive direction. Perhaps it's driving net promoter score and increasing the number of products per customer or greater quota achievement. We've had the good fortune of partnering with sales leadership, sales enablement teams to help them and empower them to achieve these types of results you see on your screen now. Along the way, we've picked up many best practices we see that the best organizations are doing, as well as a few traps that we've seen sales enablement teams unconsciously step into. So we'll be talking a bit about those as well as we go through.
So we did a little research online to see, how do you define sales enablement? We all have an opinion of what it might be, but as you can see by this visual representation, there's a lot of different answers. So one of the things we'd like to start with is see how you define it. So Gary, if you could put that chat box up. What do you understand sales enablement to be, either inside your organization or your belief of it, in our work world? Let's hear from everybody that's joined us. I'm so glad people are commenting that they like to see our faces. We decided to turn on the video and say hey, so thanks.
So some people writing in, Jill, raising salespeople to reach quota. Yep, reaching quota is a key milestone, isn't it? Taking advantage of your resources, Deidre. That's interesting. We'll talk a bit about resources coming up in a little bit.
Reporting and communications. Yep, thanks, Rob. Improve their sales. You got it, Hector. Better customer experience. Yep, customer experience is a buzzword these days as well. Sales ops. Making sure salespeople have the tools and how to use them. Absolutely. We'll talk about that. Increase net promoter score. Yeah. Thank you. Ditto, all the above. That's it, Rich, right? When everybody else starts typing, they have all the good answers.
Now some good definitions, and what I'm seeing here, Donna, is a range of definitions as well. So
absolutely, which is what we expected a little, right? Yep. So yeah, we hear a lot about aligning people and processes and priorities. It's similar to what you folks have said. It's about creating this organizational mindset where there's a commitment to readiness and excellence. Choose your words. I think it all kind of means the same thing, but it's about driving the impact. So we'll close the chat now, Gary, and I'll move on. Thank you. So Bruce and I did some research, and we found this state of sales enablement study from last year from HighSpot. And they define sales enablement as a set of processes and technologies that sales and marketing teams use to unleash the power of content to improve customer conversations and win more deals, right? Similar to what you said, there's a few things we wanted to call out. It really is about sales and marketing coming together and being aligned and making sure that the messaging is the same from both parties. It's about unleashing the power of that content. Never before have we had access to more information and assets and content, but we need to unleash the power of it. And we need to make sure it improves the customer conversations, right? At the end of the day, That's really what it's all about. So now that we've defined this and have a common understanding, why is it necessary? Right? So we know what it is. Why is it necessary? Well, customers expect salespeople to realize that they are coming to the conversation or to your meeting with a lot of research and information on you, on your products, and on your competitors. They also want you to be committed to their long-term success. They're looking for a partner. They want you to provide insights and information that maybe they weren't able to gather from their research. They want to make sure that you can confidently navigate, and confidently is the key word there, with their decision-making process. Every organization has a different process. Usually more people are involved, and we need to figure that out and do it gracefully. And lastly, help them think through their problems and needs in new ways. They want you to provide value. They want you to stretch their thinking, and it's a different way of selling than how we've done it in the past. Additionally, this is from that same study I referenced a moment ago, there are increased complexity in the deals, and you can read that quote that came from that study. So there's another idea around the importance of conversation, and this is where the rubber hits the road.
It really does, Donna. There's something, I saw this as sort of like a metaphor for what we're talking about today, and that is from the telecommunications world. This whole concept called the last mile, and if you're not familiar with that term, it is the fiber optic cable or the broadband that goes right to the consumer. That consumer could be residential or perhaps a business. And if the quality of that last mile is substandard, then everything that goes before that from the telecommunications company, all of the technology, all of the investment they've made there, all of their people, their advertising, their branding, all of that is compromised if the last mile is not top-notch. And so I thought that was a great metaphor when thinking about sales enablement, because what is the last mile in sales? And enablement plays a very powerful and critical role here. And if you look at it, it's about what is the tech stack, what is the data, what are we providing people, what are the tools, the research, the information, the product, the marketing content, bringing all these things to provide salespeople to be better armed and equipped than they've ever been before. And that's wonderful. But here's where the last mile can derail things. And here's the trap. That if the salesperson takes all of that content and turns it into a product dump, all of that should be there to fuel a conversation with the customer that the customer cares about. So we're going to be looking at the 3 enablement priorities. If the number one goal of sales enablement is to help salespeople get better outcomes from their customer conversations, from the work that we've done and over many years now of working with sales enablement teams, what are the 3 top priorities? There are others, but these are 3 really key ones. And what are some traps to avoid? Every time we talk about a trap, you're going to see this icon on the left-hand side here. So let's take a look at number 1 priority. And that is, if we're going to fuel more productive conversations with customers, let's equip the sales organization with a simple and a very scalable sales process. And like we showed before with the definition of sales enablement, there's a lot of different variations out there. So from our perspective, it really doesn't matter that much if it's a straight line or if it's a funnel or if it's a circle or it's a journey through things. But what it is a series of logical steps that a salesperson or sales team can follow along with the customer to move an opportunity through the pipeline. So let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail, because there's a trap coming up here. In fact, there's a number of them we want to highlight. So what you've got on the screen now is an example of what is a fairly generic sales process. Got a series of stages. Now yours may be 4 stages, it may be 8 stages, whatever, but 5 stages seems to be a pretty common one with the organizations that we work with. And underneath each one of these, there would be a series of milestones that would be actions that the salesperson and the customer would take that we could check off, yes, perform that action, and doing so moves an opportunity, progresses it through that sales process. So let's take a look at an example here. So we've got a sales rep. He's in the sales process, in a sales cycle, and has done a number of things, can check some boxes, asked about the customer's needs, has done some demonstrations, presented a proposal perhaps, done some pricing, there's been some objections, did a SWOT analysis, there's been some negotiation, provided a discount, and has gone ahead and forecasted and said, based on what I've done, this is a stage 4 opportunity and the revenue can be expected, we're going to start in June. It's pretty close. It's around the corner, boss. So go ahead and let's put that in the forecast. Sounds good so far. My question is for you, if you're watching this, what or who is missing from these milestones? The customer, right? So what we've got here is a series of action items that the salesperson has been taking. And it will be similar to, imagine if you've going to go on a really critical sales call, and imagine it's a meeting and it's in another state. Some of the action items you would need to take would be, you drive to the airport, you'd park your car, you'd catch a plane, you'd get off the plane, you'd drive to the client side, you'd find the meeting room, you'd set up your projector. All of these things are necessary to have an effective meeting. None of them give you any indication whether this meeting is moving the opportunity forward, the quality of the meeting, or did it have a positive outcome. So wrapping in the buyer's world, their perspective, is going to be a critical thing, and that's overlooked in many sales processes that we've seen. So for example here, the sales rep has done all these things and is really excited about it, but what's the customer thinking? Well, the customer could be saying, are we okay with where we are now? Who's going to pay for this? I really like the presentation. I like the salesperson. I like that solution. It meets our needs, but who else in our organization is on board with me to make those changes? So in this example, we've got a salesperson, sales rep. He's saying, or she's saying, this is at a late stage 4 opportunity and is forecasting as such, but we've got a customer who's way back in stage 2. And this is one of the traps if what the seller's actions and the buyer's actions are not aligned. So let me give you a couple of examples here, because why this is critical. This is the #1 problem that can lead to stalled forecasts, that can lead to higher cost of sale, that can lead to opportunities that progress through to stage 1 or 2 but never seem to go any further than that. Ultimately towards a bit of frustration and conflict between managers and salesperson and lack of quota achievement, etc., etc. Let's see an example of this. So in stage 2, you've got a critical milestone. That is, you've identified the key stakeholders. Okay, that's a good thing to do. We need to know who's making the sale and who's involved in these decisions. But there's a trap there, because wouldn't a milestone be better if the client has agreed to provide access to those key stakeholders? Another example, again from stage 2 of conducting an effective diagnosis, we've done a needs analysis. We've asked our questions. We've checked up. We've done a fact finder. But wouldn't it be better if the client has revealed the current situation, the desired situation, and the cost of inaction? The client has taken some issue. One more. Milestone. We presented final pricing to the client. Wouldn't it be healthier if the client has agreed to that final pricing? So if the milestone in the pipeline says the client has agreed to final pricing, that's the outcome we're seeking, that we can check that box. What is it implying that the salesperson or the sales team has done? They presented the pricing. But presenting is just a salesperson action. Let's focus on and incorporate into your sales pipelines customer actions at each stage. So we're going to take a look now at this is the Integrity Solution sales process. We're quite transparent about this. And let's draw your attention down to the very tiny writing, for me anyway, in the green box down here. If you look at one stage there, it says the client has shared decision criteria and urgency. And yeah, thank you, Gary. And Why is that important? Well, it's not that I've assumed, as a salesperson, I've assumed what that decision criteria and urgency is. It isn't what the last 2 or 3 clients had for their decision criteria. It's what this client has told you. And so that is the critical step. So here's the action. We call it take action. And as we go through this, we're going to be having a number of take action steps. Insert customer commitments into each stage of your sales process, and then provide the data and the content and the tools to enable the progression of that particular milestone. First action item out of today.
Thanks, Bruce. So you alluded to this earlier, the concept of the last mile as the potential biggest gap in enablement. So we have all these resources and tools and content that we're providing to the reps in order to help them have better outcomes from their conversations. And sales enablement is providing them with tremendous content and insights. And what do many reps tend to do? They talk about all this great information that you provided to them, and therein could be a potential trap. So the goal may be to provide insights to the customer, but it might turn into, a one-way showcase of information where the customer isn't really engaged in the conversation and they're not feeling like it's about them. It really is about the reps sharing all the great stuff that they want to share. So how can we equip our reps to avoid this potential trap? And so here's take action number 2. And it really is about complementing the tools and the data that you're providing with an extra focus so that you can build skills to have meaningful conversations and really engage the customer in those conversations. It's about making sure that you're really conducting an effective needs analysis so that we're asking what's happening, what is your current state and what is your desired state? And beyond that, we want to talk about that gap and the impact of that gap. So we all have, no matter who's on the line today and what company you're from, we all have one competitor in common. And that competitor is status quo. We all deal with it, and it's resistant to change. Even though clients know they have a need and they know that implementing something would hopefully drive a positive outcome, it's really hard for certain folks to take that step because of their resistance to change. So how can we talk about, what is the risk of inaction? What if you do nothing? What will happen then? If the world is changing around you and you don't change with it, then not making the decision might be a bigger risk than actually trying it. And what if we, in our questions with clients, think about the positive impact this solution or product might make in their lives and get them thinking about it emotionally, about the impact that they're going to be able to make. So the more we can tap into that and talk about the positive impact, the more we can really help sales enablement move and get into the sales performance that we're looking for. So Bruce, let's ask our audience some more insight around their process.
Yeah, I think, Donna, one of the things that you brought up a really good point here about how, and I like the way you phrased that, how we're all selling, we have the same competitor, I think you said, which is status quo. So just reverse engineering that means we're all, regardless of what industry you're in, what product you're selling, how large is your company, we're all selling the same thing. We're selling change. We're selling the one thing that your clients and our clients don't want to do. That's change. So the importance of having an effective diagnostic conversation as part of the enablement initiative is absolutely critical. So action item number 2, as Donna said, right there. Do those 4 things that are on the screen and wrap them into what you're equipping your salespeople to do. Let me ask, we're going to ask a poll question in a moment. I'm going to ask you to think about two things. One being, what is it that leads to long-term sustained success in sales? In fact, think of in your organization or people you know, the top performers year after year, they hit their numbers. What is it that contributes to their long-term success? Is it A, their superior product knowledge, selling skills? Or B, is it their self-belief, their drive to achieve, their attitude, they're willing to push through boundaries and never give up, their grit? A or B? So the question I'm going to ask you to evaluate would be, and Gary, if we can put up this poll, what percent of your top performers' sustained sales success is due to what we call their achievement drive? And that's an umbrella term for the things I just mentioned, their confidence, their self-belief, their grit, their never give up, their goal-centered. What percentage of it is their long-term success is due to achievement drive? So votes are coming in now. Just click on the one. What we're seeing that there seems to be at this stage a clear winner, but how are things coming along? And so if you haven't voted yet, please go ahead and do so. We want to capture these and we're going to send this back to you. So we're seeing the highest one is over 75%. All right. If you haven't voted, you've got another like 5 seconds to quickly press the button and do so. All right. Thank you for that. A clear winner there, over 75%. If I don't know, Gary, if people can see the results of that, if they can. Let's move on to the second poll we want to take.
Okay, and they certainly can, Bruce. They can.
All right. Thank you. If achievement drive is over 75% of their success, what percent of your organization's sales training addresses achievement drive, builds these capabilities? So votes coming in, go ahead and click on that. We're seeing another clear winner is coming out here. So very interesting, and thank you very much for voting here, but very interesting in the poll how there seems to be almost a mirror image in terms of what you've got here. Thank you for putting that up. That's really interesting, and and thank you for voting again, and that's consistent with what we did. We did a research project last year with the Sales Management Association where we together surveyed over 200 organizations and sales managers, supervisors, leaders at various roles within those organizations, so almost just under 1,000 people. We asked the same question, and the results that came out were pretty consistent with what you've shown us. So if we can lose that now, Gary, there you go, thank you. 84% said achievement drive is equal or more important than product knowledge or selling skills. And we're pretty much seeing something very similar in your voting. What was really interesting is that only a quarter of organizations rated themselves as effective at training that. So there's a pretty clear gap between what sales leaders are saying, this is really important to us, to our highest performers are good at this, to, well, but we're not actually doing anything about it. So we're over 50% gap. But here's the really interesting part. For those organizations who rated themselves effective, the minority, that 26%, we want to say, well, so what? Does that have any impact on their results? And we found that those organizations who are training their people on this thing called achievement drive, the more attitudinal, emotional part of success in sales, they're outperforming by 20% the organizations who did not rate themselves as effective in those areas. So one of the things that it really underlines a key sales enablement priority, that there's not one conversation that we need to be building and developing and training people on. There's actually 3. So the first one is the conversation that your sales professionals are having with their clients or their customers. And that's the very observable, trainable, measurable skills. That's their sales process. That's the ask these questions. These are the things that you can train them on. Number 2 is the conversation that your salespeople and your managers are having with themselves. And it's a little harder to observe that. It's their self-talk. It's what's their belief about what selling really is. Do they see selling as a noble profession? Is it something that they really aspire to, or is it something they kind of fell into because they were expected to go on to become lawyers or doctors or interior designers or something like that? what is the self-imposed barrier that they're putting on themselves? We've all got these. We've all got these barriers based on our upbringing, based on our input from parents, from friends, from bosses, from community leaders, from people, hundreds of people input all our lives have helped shape who we are and shape the level of success that we believe we deserve to have. So your salespeople are in the same way, building their belief in their abilities, their confidence, and their drive to achieve goals and the ability to set goals. And the third conversation is the conversation that your sales professionals are having with their coach as well. The most effective organizations that we've been tracking in research are building and developing all three of these conversations, not just the first one. So let's look at this thing called coaching. Because it is a buzzword now, like enablement if you like, but every organization has a very high awareness of coaching. But priority number 3 for sales enablement is to ensure your managers are equipped to provide that coaching to your sales reps. Another study we did with a slightly smaller audience, but it was mostly around sales leaders, sales managers around coaching, that 76% of companies say that coaching is a critical driver for their success, to make their numbers this year. However, same number, not the same people, but coincidentally the same number of firms or companies say that, well, we're doing very little of it. Again, another stark contrast between what leaders and companies are saying we need to do to meet our numbers and grow our revenues and what we're actually doing and training our people to do. But of the people that are coaching, of the organizations that are saying, yep, we're doing a good job of it, less than half believe it's effective. Those who are coaching their people, who rated themselves effective, are outperforming those organizations who rated themselves ineffective by 15 percentage points. Now, if there is something that you could take to senior leadership or the CEO of your organization that the data says will shift revenue by 15%, I would guarantee you would get an audience. But a question we've got to ask is, and this is, we're going to have a chat question here, Gary, an open text question. What are those obstacles that are preventing managers from committing to coaching? And I want to ask you to rethink this word time. That's like a knee-jerk reaction. It's like a customer saying, giving the price objection. We know sometimes it is a price objection, but in most cases, there's something else that's behind that. The time, I have no time to coach because I'm so busy putting out fires or I'm slammed around here. In many cases, that is code language for something else. So in your chat box, if you look over on the, enter your, thank you, Trudy's, skill deficit, lack of confidence, lack of experience is coming out. Jose, coaching not in MBOs. Thank you, Terry. Sales quota priority, we hear that a lot, is I'd like to coach, but I'm just being held accountable by my boss for numbers. They're too, you have Sarah, good point, they're too busy, too often playing fixer, like sales manager comes in to be firefighter or super closer. So there's a lot of things that are preventing that. So Bob and Johnny, thank you for typing in, I appreciate this. Please keep contributing, we've got another 30 or so seconds here. Donna, are you seeing any surprises here for you based on the answers?
Not surprises, confirmation. I love Mark, lack of upper management commitment. We hear all the time. I know this is important for me to do with my people, but my boss isn't doing it with me, and I'm not sure he wants to help me find the time to do it, right? And it's about always fixing stuff and solving problems instead of taking the time to have different conversations.
And I like, Bob, what you wrote. You said they don't see the benefits. I'm wondering who they is. Is that the frontline managers or is that the senior managers? If you could build on that for us, Bob, that would be helpful. The coaches themselves don't see the benefits of coaching. That's an interesting. I'm wondering why that would be.
And Johnny and Eric had similar comments. You know, a lot of the managers are successful reps that have been promoted, and they didn't feel the need because they were successful without it. So why do I have to do it for somebody else?
Yeah. So that's such a great point, because we've really seen an explosion of this thing called coaching coming along in the last, if you like, 6 or 7 years. It's really taken off. And one of the things that we've seen that's driving this is the changing nature of the workforce. The increased numbers of younger people who are saying, I have greater demands, I want more feedback, I want more development from my supervisor and from my manager than perhaps that manager had when she or he was in a similar role. And many times managers are ill-equipped to be able to provide that level of direction, that level of coaching. And accountability too often seen as conflict. How can you provide accountability in a way that is collaborative rather than dictatorship, if you like? So thank you for those comments. I want to go back to this whole concept of the 3 conversations, and the title across the top is When Coaching Does Happen. When managers do go beyond just the numbers and just the deals, what tends to happen? And we see 100% of the time, and here's the traps icon again, 100% of the time the focus is only on improving conversation number 1. Why is that a trap? That's a good thing. It is definitely a step forward. But you yourselves voted earlier and said the more important part of sales is conversation number 2. It is the achievement drive. It is the grit. It's the determination. It's the confidence. So how can managers coach and develop not just conversation number 1, but also conversation number 2? I'm going to show you a process that many organizations have implemented. Disclosure, it is our process. We're not saying it's the only one. There are other ones out there. You may be doing a really effective coaching process. We're showing this one because we know firsthand that it works. So the take action is build manager capability that doesn't just coach numbers and coach pipeline, but coaches the whole person. Conversation number 1. Conversation number 2. Here's a trap that we see so many organizations and managers fall into, and enablement teams fall into when it comes to this thing called coaching, is that they radically over-engineer and overcomplicate the whole thing. We saw a speaker not long ago promoting his coaching process that said you need to have a separate process for territory management, a separate process for account management, a separate process for opportunity management, and that's even before you start talking about going on a sales call together. And when you hear that level of complexity, it's no wonder that 76% of people are saying, we know it's important, but we just don't do it. And they put time up, or lack of time, as the reason or perhaps an excuse for not doing that. It's a simple, agile process that can be applied in different situations is the most effective way to go. We've seen this time and time again. Here's an example of what one looks like. It begins with a preparation up front. And where most managers will go to step number 3, which is coach, which is directing or prescribing, the most effective approach is how we can ask and listen up front. Ask about their needs and their challenges and their priorities. Listen without distraction. Praise the development and improvement, even small improvements along the way, but also don't forget to challenge. Help them grow and develop, push back the boundaries of their self-belief and their comfort zone, and challenge. And this process, being agile, can be applied to have coaching conversations around a number of different areas. Getting to understand, who is this person? Why did they get into sales? What are their goals? What are their dreams? And how can you understand them and perhaps start to shape the conversation they have with themselves as well? But it's also, we're in business to close deals. Account development, opportunity strategy, and helping them plan sales calls. So an agile coaching process that can be applied to each of those things is the way to go. So we've covered today on this webinar, we've moved pretty quickly because we've got a lot to cover, and we've really scratched the surface. We'd love to talk with you more about this. But we've looked at 3 key enablement priorities. We've looked at 3 traps that enablement teams fall into when leveraging the tools, the data, the tech stack, the information, the content. And we presented 3 take action items to be able to, what you can do as an enablement leader in your organization to sidestep those traps. So let's summarize everything.
So to recap, Bruce just said there's 3 things. It really is about that sales process. And this is around remembering the buyer's cycle and where they are, and making sure that as we track our success through the process, we're thinking about their commitments. The second was really around those conversations and making sure that reps are coming from a place of curiosity and planning for those conversations with really thoughtful questions to get the customer thinking differently and challenging their thinking, so that we're really drawing them along and getting them to think about possibilities that could really drive their outcomes. And last, it is around coaching, not just the person, but the whole person. And not just their numbers, but the whole person, and really helping people to realize their full potential. Each of us somewhere in our lives have probably had somebody that encouraged us to do something that was a little bit outside our comfort zone. And as coaches in sales, we can do that with our people. And once you stretch them, they usually don't go back to where they were before. So it's our job to help them get there. And sales enablement is a big part of making that happen. So with that, our next steps, in the handout section, Gary mentioned earlier, we did include our research brief. So this is the stats that we shared around coaching. So please feel free to download that if you haven't. And some of you might be thinking, okay, this is great. And I've seen some of the chat around, how do you build that achievement drive? And, if you want to kick the tires and give it a try, we invite you, our compliments, to come and attend one of the Integrity Solutions certifications that we host either in our headquarters location in Nashville or our secondary site in Scottsdale. And we'd like you to come and check it out and see what you think for yourself.
Yeah, Donna,
I
think that's it's a good suggestion you've made there, because a lot of people say, well, this sounds good, but how do we make it happen? What are some ideas? Well, come along and experience that. And if you want to come along as our guest, we're happy to extend an invitation for you just to learn a little bit more about it, perhaps. If that's something that you would like to learn more about, just in the chat box, just write the word yes, and we'll reach out to you. We certainly don't want to make this available to everybody, but if you'd like to know more about experiencing how organizations are making these shifts, just write the word yes in there, and we'll have someone send some information or reach out to you about that. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tracy.
Great. And with that, we wanted to make sure we left time for questions. So anybody who has anything they'd like to share or any questions they'd like to ask, we'd like to open it up to everybody else.
And we actually had a question from Johnny just a few minutes ago, wanting to know, how do you coach attitudes? Bruce and Donna?
How do you coach
attitudes?
Yeah, how do you coach attitudes? I think, Johnny, we probably would need to unpack that and get a little more specific about exactly what you're asking. Is there a specific situation or a specific person? Sometimes there is. Sometimes you can't. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? Sometimes there are some people who are just entrenched. There are other people where, at the other end of the spectrum, if you just give them some minor coaching or direction, they're off. They're ready. The key thing we want to focus on is how do you shift the bell curve in the middle? And that is not something that can happen immediately, but it is establishing a level of trust at the beginning between the coach and the coachee, making sure the person who's going to be coached is open to coaching and they can see, or they are sold on, the benefits of doing so. And then it's really beginning to get them to start thinking about the goals that are important to them. The mistake that many coaches make that when they're coming up against attitudinal things is focusing only on their sales numbers, on their activity level in many cases, and that's seen as, while it's important to the organization. Peeling that back and finding out what's important to this person. Donna mentioned earlier, coaching the whole person. Having that type of conversation is a great way to start. It's not intuitive for most sales managers. It requires a shift, first of all, in the sales manager's view of what coaching is, and giving them the skills to be able to have those types of different coaching conversations. Good question.
So Bruce, actually, Johnny added a little bit of context. He was referring to your graphic that said to coach skills, knowledge, and attitudes. If that helped a little bit, then there it is.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And Jill Emmerich asked, how do you coach someone to increase their own drive? Some salespeople don't have a strong internal drive. Can coaching improve that?
Yeah, absolutely. In many cases it can. Donna, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's about taking the little steps in the coaching model that Bruce shared. You know, it's about really helping somebody understand when they've had success, and it might be in little steps. You know, we need to take time to praise them and let them know that we noticed them doing something well, and maybe stretching outside their comfort zone and showing them that it's possible. And with that consistent support and coaching and challenging them to try it again or maybe try something new and different, people even who come to us with maybe not a lot of achievement drive build it over time. But it's through that coaching experience with their manager that helps them get there.
It was interesting. Hector in Mexico had an interesting point there. Most of the time coaches focus on attitude problems without getting to what's the root cause behind each one of those. Terry said, well, does that mean we become therapists? No. The goal really ultimately is to drive performance and productivity, but it's also if there's a trust bond that develops between the coach, between the manager and the salesperson, the salesperson wants to show up for that. They're more inspired, they can be more confident, and we start to see some of those attitudinal problems decrease.
Mark had a great comment too around coaching attitude. You know, combine people with a positive attitude with people who have questionable attitudes, you know, in a workshop or even in a work setting, right? And have people with the positive attitude help to coach those who aren't there yet. I have a client who does that with mentors, you know, people who have been successful, who have the right attitude, who we want others to model, and they make sure they're engaging with folks that they're training as new hires because we want them to be part of the culture and have that positive attitude because it is catchy, it's contagious. So let's make sure we're building that up and getting those people interacting with the folks we're trying to help. Mentors are great.
A question we've been asked, and going back to the point number 2 that you raised, Donna, is, and I might actually, I don't want to flick back through all the slides, but it was the priority number 2, which was about, I've got it here on my other screen, about equipping reps with conversation skills to get better call outcomes. And you showed a model, which is the gap model between helping the reps understand where the client is now, sorry, I'm back to front, where the client is now and where they're going to be. That's good. That's a good model. But the question often is customers are saying, look, my time is more valuable now than it ever has been. That's what your customers are saying. So if your customers are going to give 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour of their time to one of your sales reps, at the end of that 30 minutes, at the end of that hour, what are they getting that they didn't have before your sales rep showed up? And that is can be a confronting question, because if you answer that, you're getting an answer to value, what value selling really is, seen through the eyes of the customer. I can tell you one thing that customers say time and time again is of very little value, and that is the salesperson is an expert describer or presenter of data, of tools, of their they leverage their tech stack or their bright shiny object, or presenter of their solution. What they are saying is, if I have a salesperson or a sales process that can help me as a customer think through my problems or issues or priorities in new and different ways, perhaps help me see unseen problems or unseen solutions, think through the downsides of status quo in a different way that I would have thought through without seeing that salesperson, then that's value to a customer. That's differentiating. That's the type of salesperson that customers say they're willing to see again and perhaps introduce to more senior level people in their organization. So that gap model that you showed earlier is one way to frame that type of conversation as well. So, got time for one or two more quick questions?
Bruce, RK asks, what does this approach do to AHT?
That's the one I was going to pick, Gary. We are in sync. Average handle time, for those who may not know, in a call center environment, contact center environment, we do a lot of work in that area, and I have one client in particular in the Connecticut area that I'm currently working with to implement this in their call center, and it is all done over the phone. And certainly initially, as you're building the skill, when they're going through new hire training, it may take a little time because they're learning a lot of new things, which I think we would expect regardless of the, the setup and the company. But what they're finding over time is that with the framework to ask very specific questions with the model in mind, it gets them to understand what's important to the client. So they called because they wanted to talk about buying auto insurance, but what's important to them? Are they an AARP member? Is, having an affiliation like that a credential that they're looking for? Are they looking for the lowest price? Are they looking to make sure they have certain coverages because they've had a different policy before and they didn't have that? It really is around understanding what's important to them and what that comfort and security is going to do for them. So that's how we tap into, their emotions. And so even in, average handle time, this can be done effectively over time once the skill set is developed and people are using it, because they're changing the conversation to make it more meaningful for the person that called in. Time for one more, Gary, or how we doing?
Well, there's probably time for a lot if I leave myself on mute the whole time I'm telling them to you. But there was a follow-up there by RK. Is there a range of AHT improvement %?
Bruce, do we have that? I know with my client, we're in the process right now, RK, so I'll have to come back in 6 months to a year and share that success story, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But we are absolutely measuring.
I think, one of the things we can do is just, why don't we have a sidebar conversation around that, because we do have some data in that area, but I want to make sure that we're answering your question effectively. So.
Good. That gives us time for Jill's question, too. She says, can we also coach the salesperson's gap between where they are now and where they want to be?
Well, Jill, I think that's a great question, because really, when you think back about ancient times, the word coach, it was, I don't know if you saw this in some old movies, but it was a horse-drawn vehicle to take important people from where they are now from where they need to go. And really, that's the purpose of coaching, is helping somebody, whether that's an individual or a team, perform more effectively than what they did before. And I think everyone here on the phone, on this call, has had someone in their lives who's had an impact on you that has helped shape you, has helped you be better. Perhaps there's someone who believed in you more than you believed in yourself even at that time. And that person has shaped you. And hopefully you can think maybe there's more than one if you're very lucky to have that. As a coach, your managers can be those people. It's not just about driving the sales numbers, but it's also about helping build and develop the individuals on the team, which, by the way, is going to help them become more confident, take more risks, or be more expansive in their conversations and drive revenue performance as we've seen in countless organizations.
So it looks like, Donna and Bruce, that we've worked our way through most of the questions, unless anybody has any more. I wonder if you might want to take a couple of moments here in the time we have left just to point people back to any of the resources that you'd mentioned earlier. I know we had a couple of questions asking to explain about the integrity certification. Again, if you could repeat that.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things we've got on the screen now. Number one, I referenced research that we did around coaching that was done just towards the end of last year. The document on the left, you could be able to download that from this website. So that is there, that's available for you. The second thing we wanted to offer and extend to you people who are on the call is a chance to experience how organizations are actually making this shift. We have an integrity selling and integrity coaching certifications. Think of it like a train the trainer, if you like. And we offer them as an open in Nashville and Scottsdale. They're usually for our existing clients, but for people who are on this webinar, we just want to make that an invitation to come at no cost, come as our guest, and evaluate, kick the tires. Is this something that would fit your organization? And if so, that's great. If not, that's okay. You're going to have a very positive experience either way. So just write yes in the chat box if you haven't done so, and we'll be reaching out to you to talk to you about that certification.
And a couple of other resources, too, for those of you who maybe weren't here at the very beginning. I've enlarged the handouts box and make it a little bit easier to see down there in the bottom left-hand corner. Integrity Solutions has been very nice enough to provide a PDF of today's slides. So you'll see that it says Handout Sales Enablement there. And then there is an ebook and a research brief. And both of those you can just click down there to download them. But if you happen to be blocked from those, you might copy this URL down for the research brief. And I'll give you the one for the ebook too. You can copy those using Control-C, and then take those, maybe email them to yourselves or something to download in a different environment if you happen to be blocked from where you're at now. And that takes us up to about the top of the hour, Bruce and Donna. So thank you again very much for this session. And again, thanks to Integrity Solutions for providing this session and for being the sponsor and making Bruce Wedderburn and Donna Horrigan available. And they are more available to you as well, as Bruce just said, if you want to contact them. Bruce, is there a contact slide here at all? By any chance?
I'm sorry, I will advance.
Okay, there you yeah, there we are. All right, if you want to reach them, then there you have it. And we appreciate you coming today. Check out the other upcoming webinars at SMM Connect and subscribe to the magazine for free if you haven't already. Bruce, Donna, any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
Donna, go ahead.
I think it's really simple. It's the three. If I say it's simple, it's not. It's going to take some time and energy. But if we really want sales enablement to drive the outcomes we're looking for, the three ideas, the priorities, and the action steps that we outlined will certainly get you well on your way.
And I think building on that, if there's one thing to take away from the session and the work that we've been doing with organizations around this thing called enablement, is that all of the tech stack, the tools, the data, the research, all of these things, these wonderful tools that sales enablement professionals have to give to the sales force to help them be better prepared, all of that is there for a singular purpose. That's to drive better outcomes from salespeople's conversations. That's going to accelerate opportunities through the pipeline. If you're in an enablement function, you've got a very powerful responsibility to be able to do that, and we hope we've shared with you some ideas today that has got you thinking about how you can complement what you're already doing or keep doing what you're doing as well. So thank you very much for joining us.
Those are a couple of very worthy final thoughts for the session. Let me encourage everybody to do go ahead. Don't be bashful. It doesn't say your name. But what other or what info or ideas did you learn today that you can apply? You know, thinking about that and writing them down is part of solidifying those ideas in your mind and conquering the forgetting curve. So we'd really like to see what you will take back and apply on the job, and don't take the lazy way out and avoid doing that. So thank you everybody for attending, and we'll stop the recording now, but be available in case you have any questions if you need help with anything. Okay, thank you.